Welcome to the Victoria Rumble Room, a little show that delivers on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and the wide, wide world. I'm Robin Adair, and speaking of the world, a man who loves to sing that song, "It's a Small World After All," over and over again, is the Croatian sensation himself, my partner in crime, John Treleaven. Morning, John. How are you?
Great. Just I look forward to these introductions every week, Robin. Fantastic. Woo! Hey, we started this show to chat about stuff.
Yeah.
Now there's something going on like every hour. There's so much to talk about. I
wish more of it was good. I wish there was more good news.
Right. Yeah. I know. Well, we're going to try to find some of that in the month of December. But at this stage, the most obvious of things to talk about is this weather. Oh man, it's been raining forever. And usually it would rain and we have to, check the gutters, and maybe I live close in Saanich to Colquitt's Creek. We'd go down and see the flooding. No. This is impacting lives. It is impacting and changing the way we look at things. And these storms are just along with the fires and the heat and all of these things really starting to have an impact on all of us, and it sure is wearing me out. On the island, places like Tofino have been hammered, roads and bridges destroyed. What is going on? Poor farmers.
And gas lineups and people hoarding groceries. There's all sorts of very unusual stuff happening, and it's not good. And, John, I have a few thoughts on this from a certain perspective. I'm a conservative guy. And so let me take it from that standpoint, that context, to say that we have all this destruction. We have these atmospheric rivers. And the message here is very clear. This is global warming. It's really happening. For years, we've been hearing about it. Scientists have talked about global warming. They've talked about the ice caps melting, the planet getting warmer. And for a lot of people, it's been out of sight, out of mind. And now that's all changing. We had that terrible heat wave in the summer, drought, and now this endless rain. It's going on, and it's not going to get better. The carbon footprint is growing, and the problem is growing with it. We've been fooling ourselves, and it's time that we took action. It's time that we as individuals took action, government, businesses, countries. It has to happen. There's still time, but we're in a crisis. Let's go. At least that's the way I see it.
As a famous climate activist has said within the last year or two, no more blah, blah, blah. Time for action. Totally agree with you. Speaking of dangerous impacts, what about this new Omicron variant? That's appeared out of Africa. I'm listening to it on the news. It's impacting the stock market. I'm going to start to jitter here, Robin. This is a nervous time.
Well, we all feel we're getting close to sort of a resolution, at least in Canada, with so many people double vaccinated, and now folks in our age group, John, lining up to get our booster shots, and young people, very young people, are getting their shots. So there was a feeling like we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and then a new variant comes out. It's much stronger. It originated somewhere in Africa. It's been spotted in South Africa. It's made its way in a very minor way to Canada to this point, but it's highly contagious, and we simply don't know if it's going to be cured. We don't know if these vaccines are able to withstand it. We don't know enough about it. We'll know more in a couple of weeks. But again, what do you do for holidays? What do you do for plans? What do you do to see people? Do you just march on? I guess we do, but we do really keeping an eye on what's over the horizon with a new variant. Very scary stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting, we start the show by indicating that we have global coverage, universal coverage. You know how we tease each other about that. But, the analogy here is quite interesting, because South Africa, they've actually got one of the lowest vaccination rates in the world. And all of a sudden, inaction in other parts of the world. is impacting us. This is such a global problem. And the pandemic has been tough. And I don't know how, if people are feeling, how they're feeling. I know I'm feeling unsettled. Robert, I'm feeling unsettled. The wet weather doesn't help. So we're looking for sparks of light, aren't we?
Yes.
And, we've got to, right?
We
and
are.
Look at the enthusiasm of people to get out and celebrate as a community. We're seeing more and more Christmas stuff going on. The Peninsula Co-op Lights and Santa Parade drew a huge crowd.
Hey, that was great coverage by Ed Main and Stacey Ross and the folks at Check TV. They've been covering parades for years, and they do it really well. And it was so great. I was downtown around the time they were organizing for the parade route, and it was just pouring rain. And I saw so many kids coming out, so many families. People so much want to celebrate. And I think it's actually maybe an indication of what things will be like this next summer with Canada Day. People would love fireworks too. People want to get out. It's been 2 years of feeling trapped, and the pandemic has not been helping. So,
No.
That's good news. It's good news to go with all the sad news. And we have other news for you as well. Speaking of decisions by this city in Victoria around fireworks and other things, one councillor has been outspoken on a number of issues. And now Stephen Andrew has a big announcement. He's running for mayor. Let's zoom him in.
Well, good day, Stephen Andrew. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thanks very much. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm fantastic and excited. I understand you've made a decision to run for the mayor of Victoria next year, 2022. And curious, that's almost a year away here. Why are you making the announcement so early, Stephen?
Well, a number of reasons, John. I think one, we need to understand that the election in 2022 is actually a month earlier than normally is. So people would normally make that announcement in January. So here I am just on the verge of December. I mean, we're in December now making the announcement. So it's not really early when you look at the time difference between today and October 15th, when the election will occur. But you need time. If you're going to mount a successful mayoral campaign, you need to gather all the resources and make sure you're ready. Also, I said, in my announcement that I've always wanted to be transparent with everyone. People have been trying to guess what I'm going to do. We're going to enter into budget negotiations over the next little while. I just want people to know exactly where I stand. So now they know I'm running, but I still have a job as the councillor. And representing the citizens of Victoria. I'm still going to do that.
It is a whole year you're going to campaign. That's a long campaign, Stephen. And you have to define yourself as something different than Mayor Lisa Helps, and presumably different than other members of your council. How are you different? How are you hoping to portray yourself to win the support of voters?
Well, I think one thing I think is important, that listening to voters. People tell me that they don't trust City Hall anymore, that there are backroom deals going on, as I mentioned on Tuesday when I announced. And I think it's important that people understand that we're there to represent everybody, and not just small special interest groups. And I hear that time and time again. So, I guess I want to bring the table back to some sense of normalcy, that we're actually running a city, that we're not pretending to be a province or even a federal government. We're here to keep this city on the straight and narrow, make sure that we deal with some of the serious issues that we have, such as housing and public safety. So those are the kinds of things I want to work on.
Fascinating. Interesting to hear Stephen Andrew announce his intentions to run as mayor of Victoria next year. Still a year away. Wow. Everything's changing. Everything's changing. Well, that's what we're going to call our show, the Victoria Change Room. Okay, maybe not. But, but we're in the midst of constant change. And here politicians announcing, it used to be they'd announce months earlier, maybe in the spring, a full year. We got another one of these early announcements coming out of Saanich. Three-time Saanich councillor Dean Murdoch has also announced that he's running for Saanich mayor against incumbent Fred Haynes next November's. Hard to unseat an incumbent. I get why he's announcing early, but it's still a long ways away. Oh man. Hey, by the way, we're talking to Fred Haynes next week. It's second time we've chatted with him, and I can't wait to hear some of the updates that he has to bring about civic politics in Saanich. And civic politics is the foundational premise of really the grumpy taxpayers of Greater Victoria and what they focus on. And John Treleaven, a retired diplomat who cares deeply about how our taxpayer dollars are spent, is going to be our guest. And we're going to chat with him about some of these taxpayer-related issues in and amongst these different municipalities on Lower Vancouver Island. Let's zoom him in.
And in the Rumble Room right now is John Treleaven. So nice to have you with us, representing the Greater Victoria Grumpy Taxpayers, John.
Well, it's great to be here on yet another rainy day in Victoria. I didn't realize when I moved here 15 years ago that I'd saved so much money on product for my face.
No, and it just seems to rain and rain. It's
well, not to make light of a very serious situation that confronts the problem.
No, and we're not, but we also try to do the best we can with it. I do have a question out of the blocks here. Some municipalities, you could suggest a lot of them are directing tax money to things that aren't really directly to do with municipalities. They're sort of cross-pollinating with responsibilities of the provincial government, the federal government. Is this something that really has you concerned?
The role of municipalities is so fundamentally important to everybody in the province, and so fundamentally important, frankly, to the health of this nation, that just staying in the lanes provided by the legislative framework is responsibility and accountability enough for every council of a community, large or small. The point I'm making is that when they go off on these flights of unaccountable fantasy, they are taking effort away, including staff effort, away from the essential services that they've been elected to provide and the framework they've been elected to establish.
John, this segues really well for me. My question, by the way, hello, thanks for joining us. Your organizations indicated that municipal taxes are forecast to be almost double next year. I think that's what you guys have stated. With the pandemic and with all of the consequences of the pandemic, is that really a big surprise?
With the pandemic and with the situation that has pertained largely, unfortunately, to this province, whether the forest fires, the heat dome, and now this incredible flooding situation, our taxes are going up. What have we discovered in the process of dealing with the pandemic? And these are circumstances that if you were doing a game to train politicians at all levels, you might plug them in thinking they'd never happen. Well, they happen. What we have to get through them, but what we have to learn from them is where are the gaps, and we can no longer avoid spending the taxpayers' dollars to fill those gaps because the costs of inaction now are just, it's too apparent. I'm not sure that we've said that municipal taxes will double, but they're certainly going up. And I would have been able to say this with more authority even 6 months ago. They'd be going up by a multiple of the inflation rate. Now that
I don't think anybody's surprised that taxes are going up, and we take your point that it's how the taxes are being directed. It's as big an issue as how much they have to go up because of all the natural tragedies we've had in this last year. But John, I wanted to wheel back. You were talking about the fire departments and talking about the police forces and talking about the replication. It comes back to a favorite topic that both John and I have been involved in through the years. We're both former chairs of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and one of its major calls to action for many decades has been amalgamation. At least getting down from 13 municipalities in the capital region, maybe down to a more manageable 3 or 4. And that just doesn't seem to be happening. So, I mean, what do you see as a solution to giving the CRD more power? I mean, how can we come out of this situation being stronger and more efficient?
Okay, well, I understand the motivation to talk about amalgamation. And I totally respect the work that Amalgamation Yes has done and that chambers have talked about over the years. Our focus has been asking questions about service integration. If you look at the 13 municipalities, they're there because of history, right? They grew. This was really an agriculture government center with a port. Well, now in 2021, those 13 municipalities are, and I'm not using the term in a negative sense, it's almost a case of gerrymandering. They've got political establishments, very capable people have been elected over the years, and very vigorous public debates, none of whom is vested in having a strong regional voice. But look, we don't need 5 police departments. We are the most overgoverned jurisdiction, undoubtedly, in the country.
I just wanted to ask you one more thing, seeing it just occurred to me, because I was talking to somebody who actually has been on the police board. And I'd mentioned I'd be talking to the Grumpy Taxpayers of Greater Victoria today. And he said, well, one thing I can tell you about the Grumpy Taxpayers, at least they stand along with several important people in this community and different groups behind funding for the police. That is something that you guys don't mind seeing taxpayer money spent on. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely, no question about it. And I mean, the challenge facing Victoria Esquimalt Police Force and Del Manic, an extremely capable public servant, is that they are only the police force for the downtown. Well, in a city of 400,000 people, that downtown gets heavily populated at various times of the day or various times of the week. And certain laws, like all the bars close at the same time, make the task of the downtown police force a little more difficult. As, for example, does protecting the legislature in an era in which public demonstrations are the norm, right? If there was a police force for 415,000 people, there would be resources that you could temporarily shift to meet a circumstance. The way it is around here, Saanich says, well, sucks to be them.
Point well taken. And it leads into our final question today. That being, as we look ahead to the next year, 2022, and you've answered some of this already, what's on your New Year's wish list? And what keeps you up at night?
Okay, well, we moved from Saskatchewan, which, by the way, is not a seismic zone. You may get seasick from the wheat fields at harvest time, but you don't. It's not a seismic zone. We moved to a seismic zone. We love it. Don't worry. It's fantastic. But against the background of the current province-wide emergency on floods, there will have to be, of course, some form of review of how the system responded in these circumstances. Absolutely. But what keeps me up at night is we are in a seismic zone. It's widely recognized. We lived in Tokyo for 4 years. You never had to think for a second whether the government of Tokyo believed it was in a seismic zone. You couldn't go to a public park without seeing if the big one hits now, this is what you do. Every Thursday night at 5 o'clock, a public address system, think about this, came on, not on your phone. No, this is an earlier day, of course, but you heard a human voice saying, this is a test of the Manado-ku Ward Emergency Advisory Service. You heard it in the air, no matter where you were. And don't worry, we're just testing it for a week. It's our regular test. We're in a seismic zone. There has never in the history of Greater Victoria, a full-out exercise on what happens in an earthquake. Never been. And part of the issue that we've discovered very tragically this week and over the last 2 or 3 weeks, for emergency preparedness, you've got to plan and you've got to exercise. You've got to know that your plan works. Made more difficult, of course, by the fact that there are 13 jurisdictions and there are 18 fire departments. I hope in the next 12-month period, somebody takes, well, I mean, don't forget that the CRD is only a committee. It is not regional government. We don't have regional government. But I hope that somebody forces a discussion of what we really need the morning after the earthquake.
Informative opinions, informative thoughts, taxpayer-related issues, how all this money is being spent. It was great to hear from John Treleaven speak to municipal, provincial, federal related spending, and you know, we're paying for all these taxes. So coming into a political year in 2022, lots of elections. I'm pretty certain we'll talk once again with John Treleaven and the Grumpy Taxpayers.
And they have so much to be grumpy about, John. And I was thinking there's grumpiness on both sides of the political spectrum, because you got people that are grumpy because government spends too much and they're spending overlapping each other and there's wasted money, and that's something to be unhappy about. And then there's people that feel that the government doesn't spend enough on the things they want them to spend money on. They should be spending more on the things they want. And so they're unhappy too. So there's no lack of people who are interested in this topic. So I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to discuss this. We'll chat about this with our guest next week. Saanich Mayor Fred Haines will be with us, and we'll ask him about how they're managing things out in Saanich, what he's looking forward to in this year coming, his final year before the next election. And I'm sure Fred Haines will have lots to say. But John, it's hard to believe, but we're getting ready to wrap this show. And before we do, I thought you might like to just touch once again on how people can like us, follow us, share us, and get on side with the Rumble Room.
Absolutely. You know, we're over 190,000 cumulative views since April. So somebody's listening to this last couple of minutes of the show. You can like and share the sort of composite amount of interviews that we create on Facebook. On Twitter, we also, lots of activity on Twitter these days. Wow. So that's encouraging. Also on LinkedIn. I've got a huge LinkedIn following. I was an early adopter, you know, in the mid-90s, and lots of folks are chatting there as well. We got them, you know, all over the place. If you want to see all of these videos, please go to our website, boom, go to our YouTube channel, boom, and of course, if you want to muck around and get stuck for hours, go to TikTok and Instagram and just participate in insane dialogue.
And what else do you have to say, John? Are you going to say I'm John Jurisic? And then I can say, and I'm Robin Adair.
Yes,
and rumble on.
Yeah. Should we just do that? That was funny.
That's what we're going to do. That's it.